Welcome back. On to the latest on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Citing regulatory chaos, a federal credit union based in Manhattan is calling to remove Mick Mulvaney from the CFPB and affirm Leandra English as acting head of the Bureau. A U.S. district court recently ruled against English, siding instead with President Trump, allowing Mulvaney to serve as acting head. Joining us right now is Arkansas Attorney General and chairman of the Republican Attorney General Association, Leslie Rutledge. Attorney General, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
What is your take on this, what's going on in this battle over the CFPB leadership? How should this play out?
Well, the president absolutely has the authority to appoint Mick Mulvaney as the director of the CFPB, and that's why the court ruled in director's favor in this. And what a refreshing change Mick Mulvaney has been already at the CFPB from the leadership of Richard Cordray.
Yeah, well, what should be done there? I mean, we have a conversation about this agency every morning, and we're trying to understand where exactly they've been helpful to the consumer.
Well, I've been trying to understand that as well, and I think that's the real challenge, that you have an agency, the CFPB, that's absolutely out of control. It's a total behemoth, and regulations that hurt Americans' access to credit, or whether it's small dollar lending, bankers not being able to bank. Just a simple thing is going to be able to buy a car, or an entrepreneur wanting to start a business. No longer can Americans just go down to their local bank and do that. And the bankers want to, and they want to invest in their communities and want to invest in job creators. But unfortunately, since the creation of the CFPB, they haven't been allowed to under this past administration. And hopefully, under Director Mulvaney and President Trump, that we're going to get that ship turned around.
Give us a sense of the legal background that underpins your view. Has there been any precedent since this agency was created in 2010? And is this all based upon the Federal Vacancies Act that Mulvaney has already had an appointment confirmed by the Senate within the OMB?
Well, so much of it has to do with, the entire structure of the CFPB as it was set up, was questioned through it's constitutionally uncertain in terms of having the authority and whether or not the director has accountability to Congress, who they speak to, who they have to, again, have accountability to, and whether that's, their budget, who is the director of the CFPB. All that has been challenged by the courts. My colleagues from Michigan, South Carolina, others were part of that lawsuit prior to me being elected Attorney General, and that's something that we're going to continue looking at and pushing back on, is just the sheer constitutionality of the structure of the CFPB.
What about the possibility, it's Dagan McDowell, that it just gets dismantled? Is that legally impossible?
It's not legally impossible. It's certainly a big challenge. Anytime, you create something in government, it's hard to unring that bell. But it's something I believe that would help Americans and help job creators if we were to slowly dismantle it, while at the same time protecting consumers across the United States. We certainly don't want consumers to be taken advantage of, but we also don't want to see an agency that impedes the job growth in the private sector and in Americans' ability to go out and support their families. But what we have are thousands of unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats deciding whether or not consumers can pay their bills. And it's absolutely mind-boggling that someone who knows them, who's perhaps grown up with them, lived down the street, and has been their banker for 20 years, can't make a decision, but rather we have to rely on some out-of-control bureaucrat in Washington, D.C., who's accountable to no one to make that decision.
So look forward to the impact of this. We can scale it down, but what will be the impact to the consumer? You've championed opportunity. You've championed the consumer. A big theme of this administration has been deregulation, which has tremendous fiscal stimulus. What's going to happen to this agency? How's it going to benefit the consumer?
Well, hopefully the CFPB, to benefit the consumer, would allow them more access to credit and would allow them to, again, to be able to start businesses, to take care of their families. What you see when you go to the bank now, or you borrow money, or extra fees, cost added on, compliance cost. I've talked to so many individuals who have said we would much rather hire a loan officer than to hire more compliance officers. Those fees are passed on to each and every one of us across the United States every day. When we go in and we don't understand, when you buy a house, why is the paperwork, 6 inches taller than it was 10 years ago, perhaps, when you bought a house? Right. And it's astronomical, the sort of paperwork and compliance involved. And quite frankly, it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. The questions being asked, the data gathering that's being done by this agency is again, absolutely out of control, and
like
it hurts consumers and it costs consumers.
Sounds like a lot of overlap there, Attorney General. Good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
You bet. Thank you.
AG Leslie Rutledge there.